In less than a month, we're going to be together for NextUp, the youth sports industry conference that League Apps organizes. And today's conversation, I think, is a reflection of the kind of conversations that are going to take place at that event. And I think one thing as we started NextUp, and our first one was in 2019, I think it was out of a conviction that people in youth sports were looking for their peers that are trying to do this as a profession, that are navigating lots of change, and the opportunity to learn from each other and learn from experts and be part of a community and have a professional network was something that would serve them in their mission to run and lead amazing youth sports programs and deliver amazing youth sports experiences. And I remember way back in 2019, there was I gave a talk about how much youth sports was going to change, the transformation that was coming. And while this was pre-COVID, in many cases, everything that we thought would be the case as a community, I think has certainly been, and more so. And when I think back to that period of time during COVID, after that first NextUp, we talked about how it was the most disruptive moment that any of us had experienced in youth sports. And that obviously we couldn't run programs, couldn't open facilities. The change that we were experiencing in our industry and in our world was profound. But while you couldn't see the virus, you could see that disruption. You could see that change, and we could experience it. And I think what has changed is now, I think at this moment, we are actually experiencing an even more disruptive moment than we did during COVID. More change. It's driven by the changes that are taking place within youth sports itself. There's investment capital coming in. There's the impact that technology is having. There's the changes and shifts in governance and different kinds of rules. There's also changes that are happening within our society, right? The expectations that parents and kids are having, the role that NIL or changes in college recruiting might be having as well. To say nothing of the challenges it means raising kids today and the impact that technology can have on them, and social media, and the opportunity that youth sports presents to really offer such powerful experiences for kids. So at such a change, there's so much disruption happening. It's just not something we see in the same kind of way that we did during COVID, but it is that moment. And at a period of significant change, that's when community is more important than ever before. That's when the opportunity to learn from peers and experts is so critical, because while none of us have the answers, that means all of us have the answers, and there's an opportunity to hear from each other. So that's what we're about, and that's what NextUp is about. So what I wanted to do today is preview some of the things that we're going to be talking about and really highlight some incredible voices and perspectives that'll be part of the conversations this evening. So if you can, or this today, I should say, if you can slide me, Kara, to the next slide. So in terms of NextUp, let's give you a little taste of it. We'll roll a video as people can start to visualize being together in a month.
This reminds me, the time before social media, right? Before Facebook, before Instagram.
Yeah, well, the technology is going to play. AI.
Access to social media and the internet.
Women's sports has captured the world's
youth
attention.
sports market expected to remain.
How much more the world's going to change of youth sports in the next 5 years? Can we meet that moment?
Meet like-minded people, be able to see people I work with in person, meet people who work with other organizations.
I know I'm pumped up for this. And as we think about NextUp and the focus this year, the theme is beyond the game. And I think it's the recognition that youth sports is no longer just a game. It's no longer what happens at the field or on the court or in the rink. That fundamentally, so much about what happens with youth sports exists beyond what that experience is, right? And it's all about what it means to be running an organization and all the complexity and challenges and opportunities that presents. And it's also recognizing that what happens on that field or on that court has an impact well beyond wins and losses. That is also something to be recognized and understood, and that youth sports can provide such a critical outlet and opportunity for the development of youth as well as the development of our communities at a time when there's not many other things that kind of bring us together. So the stakes are high, the opportunity is real, and that's what NextUp is going to be about this year. And what we've done is, as we kind of share some perspectives, is we're going to have a bunch of amazing people in the room. And as in past years, this will be a sold-out event. If you go to the next slide, please, with a diverse mix of people from different sports, different roles within organizations, representing people from all across this country. There's even some folks from Canada that'll come there. One has even driven all the way from Vancouver the past couple of years. So we're going to have a cross section of the most important, influential organizations in the room for these kind of conversations and dialogue. And the way we structured the agenda this year and the topics that we want to cover is really to think about, one, what is the way to have these kind of discussions that we think can apply to everybody? How is it that you design for the stakeholders in youth sports, the parent, the coach, the athlete, and what are those dynamics and changes that are happening there? What is the best way to build the business of youth sports? Because the challenge in youth sports is not so much that it's a business, it's that people don't understand how to run a business or actually understand what it means to be in the business of youth sports, which is to be in the business of community and youth development, not simply only a question of a bottom line. It's a discussion around tools of transformation and how technology and AI will play a role, and also the opportunity to recognize people who are making a huge difference in the community. And one of the things that we're excited about this year is it's not just simply an opportunity to hear from experts, but we're going to be creating structured network opportunities after each one of these sessions for people to interact and learn from each other and discuss what they thought about that content and how it might apply for them and what are the best practices, what are the questions that they have. In addition to that, we're going to have some incredible breakout sessions that really allow us to go deep and dive into real specific topics. We're excited to highlight women in sports through our breakfast, as well as the engagement of our professional leagues that we work with, and the opportunity to really go deep in specific sports. And then a range of panel-led discussions and experts, and as well as workshops that cover a range of topics, many of which are going to be previewed today. Everything from marketing and facilities to recruiting to competitions, to business and finance and questions of an M&A, to how to build the most inclusive and accessible programs possible, how to work most effectively with parents, how to navigate liability risks, not to mention the leveraging of data and metrics, as well as AI in youth sports. So there's a spectrum of topics. We're going to cover it all, in addition to the things that happen at the coffee breaks and the dinners that also make it such a rich experience. And so we're excited for people to be part of it. And if you are considering it and haven't attended, or if you have, do not wait. I will guarantee it will be sold out. That's happened in the past couple of years, and that, based on the verbals we've gotten, will be happening as well. We will be starting the program this year at noon on Wednesday, the 15th, with a preview kind of soccer gathering that'll take place that morning, and a happy hour that'll take place at 5 p.m. that evening. The next day will be a full day, 8 a.m. That'll go to 4 p.m., which will allow people to kind of benefit from all of those breakouts, networking sessions, and then and still get away that evening if they want to. If you haven't had a chance, you can check out and still go to nextupconference.com, as well as click on the QR code here to access hotels. And with that, I think we're excited to kind of get into the conversation, because what NextUp is about is fundamentally about the conversations that'll take place. And when I think about the conversations that we want to have, I think about how do we highlight some of the best organizations doing incredible work in youth sports, bringing different perspectives to the table. And so with that, I want to bring up a few of our first panelists here for this discussion, because so much of this assumption here is that youth sports is changing as much as it's changed to date. And these three individuals, in Martin Brown, Jess Brodsky, and Jordan Baltimore, I think are representative of innovation, of leadership, of character, and folks that I have a lot of respect for in the way that they go about going about doing their work and leading their organizations. And so excited to both introduce them to you and then really turn it over to them as we talk about some of the themes connected to youth sports. First, I'll just quickly introduce Martin Brown as the president and CEO of Steel Sports. It's an organization that really focuses on transforming youth sports through character, culture, and fun. And they work with thousands of players as well as coaches across a tremendous wide variety of sports. And I've always enjoyed talking to Martin because they're an organization that emphasizes culture, emphasizes leadership, emphasizes mission in really exciting ways. Also excited to have Jess Brodsky, the Chief Commercial Officer at Player Data. We talk a lot about data. We talk a lot about AI. We talk a lot about player development. And Jess is in the middle of all of that as a dynamic leader, knowing how to scale ventures. She's a former athlete herself with a background of engineering, business degree, and they're really using cutting edge technology to do physical tracking for the masses. And excited for everyone else to experience some of the dialogues that Jess and I've had. And then last but not least, someone who probably needs no introduction to many of you. I've been around the kind of NextUp circuit for a while. Is Jordan Baltimore, the CEO of New York Empire Baseball. He's the founder and CEO of that organization, and as well as leads research and training there. And they are a program that does baseball training, camps, and teams from young ages all the way to pros. He's also the CEO of Relentlessly Inspiring Sports Experience, which is a platform now owned by Shorten Capital, and as well as a founder and executive director of Sharing Empire, which is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to supporting children, families, teams, communities through baseball. So you can see just by the bios themselves how accomplished this group is, and maybe just as a way of welcome. I'll just start with this like as an overall question as we jump into specific topics. I'm making this assumption that as we go into NextUp this year, that there's a lot that's changing about youth sports. And I'm curious, what's the change that you're most thinking about or you're most focused on or excited about or concerned about as you think about where youth sports is going? Maybe I'll start with Martin for you to share your kind of perspective as you think about where youth sports is and where it's heading.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. It's great to be here. It's good to see you again. Great to be with Jessica and Jordan. For us, I mean, it's kind of multifaceted. I think the one thing that's consistent right now in youth sports is that there's not one thing that is changing. I think, whether it's from player development, whether it's from data, whether it's, events, whether it's tech in particular, I think the changes are kind of immense. And for us, we are making sure that we're trying to keep our pulse on all of those things, right? We're not focusing as much on, hey, we need to. The tech industry is changing, whether it's AI, which is obviously transformational in everyday life, not just sports. I think we're going to see that in the next 3 to 5 years, very much so. It's everything, and I think the important thing for organizations, and particularly our organizations, we can't just focus on one thing. So if you focus on one thing, you're going to take your eye off the ball of other thing that's changing, and whether that's on the soccer side, with leagues and events. On the player development side and the coach development side, that is changing, and the way people are being educated and the way coaches are being educated is changing consistently. And as I said, the AI is a big piece of it as well. And it's how, if I was to rank them, I would say our priority is probably AI, although we can't take our eye off any of that ball. But how can we bring AI into youth sports where it's a benefit to all involved, right? Whether it's a benefit for the clubs, whether it's for coaches, and obviously athletes and families as well. I haven't seen anything yet that anyone has that full answer yet. I think it's developing. We don't certainly have that answer yet. We have some ideas where we want to potentially bring AI into our organization and how we can best serve that. But that would probably be the number one piece. But for us, it's not just one thing. I think there are so many changing. Even from the financial side, with private equity we talked about, and even from access. I think that's changing consistently as well. In underserved communities and what access do they have. So. That's one of the exciting things about being a youth sports, right now, is that everything's changing and everything is moving forward at a really rapid pace. And it's exciting for me to kind of making sure we're trying to have our fingers on these pulses, right? You're trying to all the time consistently about this change. So
Jordan, well, and Martin, what I appreciate you saying, I mean, so there's so much change that's happening. Jordan, you're a veteran, been around for a while, right, of youth sports and youth baseball. I always vividly think about going to the first ABCA and seeing the guy with the ball on the string and being like, oh, like what's happening? And now his booth has gotten smaller and smaller. And I think at this point, maybe he's not at the ABCA anymore. Talk to me about when you think about what's the change that you're most focused on or you think is most notable. And do you buy this thesis that this is a time of maybe the most change we've ever seen in this industry?
So I think what Martin said is probably most accurate. It's what's notable about it is that so many things are changing all at once. And in reality, Martin touched on something as well that I think is the critical piece here. Regardless of the resources that we have, the successful operators that are going to need to stay focused on how do I apply what is changing to the children that we coach, to the families with whom we engage, because it's very, very easy. And we've watched it happen. It's very, very easy to get so caught up in the tech, the analytics, the AI, how you apply these things and the investments that people are making. And what gets lost is the connection and the commitment to the experience that the players are having. So managing and realizing how can I make these technologies, these trends, because I don't think they're fads. They're meaningful trends across every discipline. How can I apply them? And Martin, you nailed it. You don't necessarily have the answer. It's exploratory. But how can I make sure that I apply it in a way that's going to enhance the value and the experience that every child and family have, and certainly every member of our staff and team have as a part of our organization and the ecosystem as a whole?
Yeah, I love that, Jordan. And as I bring in Jess here, there's a Jeff Bezos quote I like about innovation. When they ask him, like, how do you think about what's going to change over the next 5 or 10 years? And he's like, don't focus on what's going to change. Try to focus on what's going to stay the same, right? And in the case of Amazon, it was like people want a good deal, right? They want cost savings. So I think in this particular case, I think that what I see is an opportunity for that delivering that experience, right? And that idea of player development, right? That isn't what's going to change. It's the tools you might have, the information you might have, the things around it. I think to your point, Jordan. Now, so Jess, how would you think about this? As someone who, has experienced sports in different ways, what is the way that you think about the moment we're at in youth sports, and especially as you all are trying to kind of drive a revolution a little bit on player development side?
Yeah, I think there's such a wave, and I agree with both Jordan and Martin here. Like there is such a wave of technology, and AI is really at the forefront of that. What it's done is it's democratized so many technologies that are now all of a sudden available to anybody. Things that used to just be in the MLB now are available to, U9 players if they want them. And so I think there's a really interesting change happening between technology providers and clubs where we have to preserve what's important about youth sports, which is the coach and player relationship, the club and player relationship, the parent player relationship. And so there's an opportunity where clubs can partner with the right technology companies and the right technology leaders. And they really, we're all kind of leaning on each other to figure out how do we help cut the noise and make sure that the kids are at the forefront, the coaches are at the forefront of how this innovation changes. And I think that relationship between the coach, the player, the parent, the tech company, that is probably a change that I know we're most excited about at Player Data, being a tech company in this space where we have this opportunity to solve bigger problems and help our clubs differentiate, but also shift out the noise and focus on what's actually helpful for them, which is, as both of you said, we're all in the business of making players better, giving parents, players, families experiences that are going to change their lives. So as long as we're walking in the right direction.
Yeah, so just if we just stay on this, as I think about some of the topics we'll talk about it next up, one thing I think about is what is what does it mean to be in the business of player development, community development, right? Progression. And in many cases, I think for youth sports for a while, it's okay, the person who's coaching me or the organization, they may have played in college or they may have been professional, so like they must know what they're doing. Now it seems like we're moving to an advent of data that starts to kind of expose and I think create a premium of how organizations are measuring or at least thinking about what is a model for player development and progression versus like just trust me, I know a third baseman when I see it. Um, and so I'm curious as you think about this, where we're at, what is the way that organizations can most effectively leverage kind of the tools that are available, and what are organizations not doing that they should be doing when it comes to how to think about kind of that player development progression that is at the heart of youth sports?
Yeah, I think to talk about youth sports, like if you talk about elite sports for a second, the real differentiation is how they develop their elite players. How do they get that extra inch? I think what the magic of youth sports is, and what we see a lot of our clients trying to do is we're all in this together. Like, yes, winning matters and winning is important, but at the same time, developing players is just as important, if not more important, in a lot of these areas. And we can leverage, for the first time in tech, we can leverage the shared knowledge of coaches from all different divisions, all different levels of experience to enhance that coaching experience and enhance that development pathway. We talk a lot at Player Data. We develop personalized coaching plans but we don't do that in absence, right? A coach still knows there's still intangibles a coach is always going to be able to see. Technology will never replace, I don't think, a coach's eye of, did that kid, just shake another kid's hand after it was a certain type of play, or after he knocked him over, did he help him up? That is still an intangible that will always be there. There is an intangible about, do they see the space on the field of where they're going and how they're trying to get there before the space is available? That's coaching. That's the beauty of it. I think there's a lot that we can do to take care of some of the other pieces and help coaches educate themselves faster on different trends, different ways to develop players, and help parents and players also develop that knowledge faster to get everybody on the same page and really create that unified front between the club, player, parent, and coach to get everybody marching in the right direction. And some of our best clubs that we work with, or some of our more advanced clubs, are doing that. They're asking us for, hey, what's the club next door doing? Can we share data with them? How are they thinking about coaching and development? How are they doing personalized plans? Can we together share our data to create, what could be a better injury prevention plan for this type of player, or what could be a better development plan for a player trying to get in college? And everybody in that level or echelon wants to share and is open. And I think that's really the beauty and the
Yeah.
opportunity in youth sports.
Martin, when you think about, and I think it ties to parent expectations, there's this idea of player development, but in the end of the day, it's also the holistic child development, right? Like fundamentally, parents want more than anything else for their kids to be successful. And maybe sports is a manifestation of that, but it's not limited to that. How have you built a cult? What is the way you think about a culture of player and coach development to kind of deliver on the kind of promise that seems to be central to kind of what esports is about?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that we talk about at Steel Sports a lot is that sports is just the vehicle, right? We want to teach life lessons, we want to build character, and sports is the one of the best ways to have that as a vehicle to do so. I think in terms of measuring that, which is something that we do very much at Steel Sports. It takes a village to do it, and it's again it's multifaceted. It's from driving that culture from the moment that you're not even onboarding, whether it's a coach, staff member. It goes all the way from the recruitment side. What type of people are you looking for to be in your organization? Are you looking at players that coaches that fit your core values and your mission and really buy into it? And we get it right a lot of the time, but sometimes we don't. And I think it's important that in any organization that if there's staff members, whether they're coaches, whether they're administrators, whatever they happen to be, if they're not a good fit and they don't buy into what you're looking to do as an organization, we say that this might just not be the place for you to excel. And I think finding the right people at the end of the day, and Jess kind of nailed it with that relationship between coaches and staff and families. This is a people centered, at the operator level, industry. And if you don't have your people right, it doesn't really matter what tech you've got, what facilities you're playing on. At the end of the day, you're not going to give a quality experience, and you're not going to really impact those kids positively so that they can grow their character. They can take those core values or those things that they're learning, resilience and grit and things that they're learning on the field in games, and then demonstrating them in their school and in their community and in their home. And ultimately, what we like to try and do, and that's something that we ask all of our parents, are you seeing, we talk about our core values at Steel Sports, but we look and say, are you seeing your kid demonstrate those core values at home, at school, in the community? Because ultimately, yeah, great, do it on the field, but that all comes down to the people that you have. If your people aren't also demonstrating that and preaching that and singing that, every day, then it's not going to transform into those coaches. You're not going to get to those players. You're not going to
Yeah.
get transformational learning across the board and really see that impact.
I love that. And Jordan, I want to push this conversation further as we think about the business of esports or the business of player development, right? Like, because I think that's one of the things we'll talk about at NextUp, which is, and I want to maybe break this down in two dimensions. One, in the context of business, it means that parents aren't the problem, they're the customer. And that means you have to have a relationship with that customer. And anybody I know that's part of Empire, when I'm fortunate to be in New York City, they feel like a customer that's getting a lot of value, that has a partnership with Empire. What is it about that relationship? Because when you have this idea of development, you imply an expectation. How do you manage those expectations, and what is the way you build that relationship with your customer? That's at the heart of this idea of being in the business of esports.
Jeremy, as you're talking for the last few minutes and with Martin and Jess, I keep coming back to a conversation you and I had, I believe at ABCA, as a matter of fact, where we said, if you view the customer as the enemy, you're in the wrong business, right? And it's not that your customer is the problem. You're not understanding what the customer needs. You may have a great product. And Martin, you just nailed it. If everybody's not delivering upon what the experience needs to be for your organization and for your customer, and in this case, it's a child who is expecting, certainly in our case and your case, Martin, a really quality experience in terms of the quality of instruction they get and the quality of experience they get, none one without the other. So, Jeremy, to answer your question, it's right. Everybody talks about the concept that youth sports has two customers. There's a child, there's a parent. The parent has the credit card, the child is on the field. We need to speak to and engage with both of them meaningfully and realize that the experience begins before they walk in our door and it doesn't end when they walk off the field. Every aspect of the experience has to be seen to, and that's where the long-term business is built. It's not built on, I just won a game, right? Jeremy, one of the things that you lent to me that was Shane Battier saying a winning culture doesn't mean you win every game. And when you apply that to business, you realize exactly what you need to do to build a long-term winning business, which is, how do I create an experience that is winning? And to know what that means, you need to truly understand who your customer is and what they want, right? Do they want development for their child? So some people are apt to say, oh, my child's not going to be the next Derek Jeter, so he doesn't have to come to practice. If that's where their head is at, you haven't explained the value of youth sports well enough to them for them to succeed in your organization and for you to build a long-term successful business. So understanding that, to really get into this, Jeremy, you said you want to push it, to really understand this, if your customers are walking away or fighting with you or not on the same page with you, either they don't appreciate the value you provide, and that's certainly possible. You haven't explained why the value you want to provide is valuable to their child and to them, short and long term, or you're just not doing a very good job of providing that value. And it's one of those three things.
Yeah.
And all of them are necessary for building a long-term success.
And Jordan, right, Jeremy, in
please.
terms of, in terms of, that athlete, coach, parent triangle, it has to all be pointed in the right direction. And to a point, it is kind of like having two customers, and those two customers don't always have the same objectives. You're asking a child what they want. Ours will tell us, fun, athletic development, competition, whatever those three things. A parent's going to might give you different things. So as an organization, you have to look at the family as a whole, holistically, of what experience you're delivering, what value are you delivering, because you can't just look at it from a parent and say, oh, they've got the credit card, so we need to deliver what the parent does, because then you're missing a whole boat on what's best for that child. And you can't also look at it from the child perspective, because they might have a different perspective and a different outcome of what they're looking for than their parents. So you really have to, it's a collaborative effort, and that's what I think makes youth sports very unique and interesting, is that when you think about families and athletes and parents as customers, it's very different from those objectives change over time, those perspectives change over time, and they're different depending on if you're a parent or if you're a child a lot of the time, and you really have to deliver on all of those things, as an organization.
Jeremy, the truth is, sorry to belabor this, but nobody's done it better than League Apps, right? Think about what you call us. We're partners. We're not your customers, because we have to be moving in the same direction. We have to move in that direction together. That's not easy. But League Apps committed that to us. I mean, it's why we're here. So viewing the children, the families in your program as partners is a critical first step and a commitment that needs to be made for success.
And Jordan, well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that. And what I also like is that I think what is the way you redefine the expectation? If you're a partner versus a customer, or as you're saying, what is the way you redefine winning in youth sports, right? Because if winning is simply the outcome of what happens at the game, and that's why your kids are part of it, you actually don't control that as much as you might want to coach and have the best players on the field. But if winning means all these other things that they're getting out of that experience, that progression, the advancement, everything else, you now are in a situation where you can then deliver on that promise and set those expectations. We're as Next Up will attest, these conversations can go for days. At least we have a day and a half there. We don't have a day and a half now, or they're going to yell at me in terms of making sure we cover the range we're going to cover here. But maybe a last thread of topics, just as we think about AI, we hear that as a buzzword, right? It's impacting every aspect of society. What is the way that you think about how we should be thinking about tech and AI in the youth sports industry, right? If you had to kind of sum up what you're most excited about or focused on.
Yeah, I think and some good stories, Martin and Jordan. I'll have to have this chat at a different time because I'd love to bounce some stories off of you guys, and I'm sure we've got war stories here to talk about in that triangle in that relationship. But AI for us is people are looking for AI as a silver bullet, I think. They use, first of all, the word AI is probably one of the most overused word in the tech industry that exists. Everything has all of a sudden become AI enabled. AI is a tool, and what it can do is it can make your organization more efficient and it can back up your organization's goals. It is not it's not a replacement. There's not one AI tool, and I think Martin, you said it earlier, that's going to change the entire face of your organization or is going to compensate if the customer relationship, as Jordan was talking about, is a little bit broken or not working. It's the thing that can take time off people, like redundant tasks, time off people's plate, and let them focus on the things that really deliver value and things that they can uniquely deliver value. And an example, people make what's called development plans for kids. They go over them quarterly. It's a big part of a lot of organizations. That should be gathered and put together by AI. And then all a coach has to do is go through it. The club director has to go through it, director, coach, whoever that might be, goes through it, makes edits, changes it, and gets it out to a parent. But the foundational work of collecting that data, putting it into one place, that's something, we and a lot of other companies work really hard to do, so you don't have to do it anymore. And so I guess the sum of this answer, to make it really concise, is it's a tool that's going to save people time and allow people to put their time into places where only they can provide value and the things that technology will never be able to do: build better humans, build better players, build better relationships.
I love that. Martin and Jordan, we're about to get out of here, but if you had to think about what's the top question you're most excited to explore at Next Up, right? In your own conversations or listening for experts, what's most top of mind for you that you're trying to understand and think about to make your organization better over the next year? Martin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm interested in the utilization of how clubs and organizations are using data to improve themselves as organizations, and whether that's multifaceted, right? Whether that's the player experience, whether that's the coach experience or your staff experience, or whether that's that relationship. So I think there are so many different points of data out there now that people are collecting. I'm really interested in speaking with people of how are they utilizing that to improve their organizations. At the end of the day, you collect all the data you want. If you're not going to implement it and use it for the better, then there's no point in collecting it in the first place. So I'm really interested in seeing what all other organizations are doing to use the data that they're collecting to improve themselves and see how they can get better.
Love that. Jordan, and what about you? I know you're entering a new phase. It's exciting with the Shore Capital partnership. What is the one thing that's top of mind for you as you enter Next Up?
I mean, it's how do we scale successfully through acquisition and growth, de novo growth of, making sure that as we grow, as we scale, we don't compromise our culture. We only improve upon what we've done up to now and hopefully look back and say, my goodness, how did we get this far operating this poorly, right? I'd like to look back a year from now and know that what comes out of the next few weeks, certainly at Next Up, is an opportunity to learn from the best and the brightest of how they have grown and scaled and continued to train staff, shepherd and steward their culture as they've grown, right? It's very easy to grow a business, not very easy to scale a business. It's very easy to inject capital into a partner. It's not very easy to integrate and grow and scale together with a partner. Those are real challenges that are top of mind for me every day now.
Love that. And I'm excited because this distinction between growth versus scale is a great one, and one that I think we want to talk a lot about at Next Up. And I think it's the thoughtful leaders that's thinking about that distinction that are the ones that I know are going to deliver the best sports experiences. So thank you, Martin and Jessica and Jordan, for joining us. We're excited to see you October 15th and 16th at NextUp. People have some questions in the Q&A because I didn't create any space for it. They could fire those away. But we're excited to spend more time with you, and it's obvious why we wanted to hold your examples and your perspective in the context of the conference in a few weeks. So thank you very much, and excited to build on this conversation with Jesse and Zay as part of the next part of this conversation. And if you think about it, what we just heard, I think, is organizations doing great work, and then there's the question of, well, how did those organizations get recognized for that great work? Is because effectively there's a lot of people out there promising lots of things, but what is the way to break through that noise and tell that story for the benefit of getting the right kind of participants, the right kind of coaches, sponsorship, revenue, whatever it may be. So I'm fortunate to be joined by two incredibly talented individuals. I get the privilege of working alongside and being a colleague of Isaiah Clark, or known as Zay. Probably needs no introduction for thousands of youth sports organizations. People may be tuning in to his regular kind of show where he's talking a lot about marketing. We're excited to have him kind of curate and lead a conversation in NextUp. And then we have Jesse Winter, a longtime League Ups partner, president and CEO of Level Up Basketball, has over 60 teams in an AU basketball program based out of Long Island, a former basketball player himself in college and professionally. And I know he was named as one of the 125 most influential grassroots directors in the East by Several Waves Media, which is a great designation and well-deserved, Jesse. So I'll start maybe and put Zay on the spot, and then bring it to Jesse's example. With the Zay, you're in the middle of this, helping people tell their stories. There's a lot of noise. What is the ways that organizations doing great work? How do they break through that noise? What's the pattern you see if organizations do that well?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jeremy. It's something I run into a good amount. There is a lot of noise in general in social media and in life, and right, every time you go outside, there's noise on the street, right? But one thing that I've seen from orgs that do that well is they focus on their connection with their parents, with their players, with their community, and of course the message as well. So they understand that families all have their own choices outside of sports. Is something that usually people come to escape or to improve themselves, right? So I always tell people all the time is creating that clear, consistent message of who you are and what you are, whatever channel that is, whether it's on the court or off the court. That is something that allows you to really kind of take a little knife and cut through the noise a bit. So that's what I've seen that works.
And Jesse, when you think about this, I mean, what have you done for your organization? Have you grown? What is the way that you've been most effective at helping people understand what you're really about when there's a lot of organizations out there maybe claiming different things?
I think there's a lot of organizations that are kind of fly by night. They show face for a little bit and then they're off the scene and they're back on the scene. I think the biggest thing is just staying active and consistent. And, on social, if we're talking about social media specifically, like you're creating a story, and what is that story that you're creating? Like, to me, it's delivering authentic, high quality content that you're trying to speak to different demographics. And the biggest thing to me also is without feeling forced. Like you're showing content, but it's genuine content. If your team wins a championship, promote your team winning a championship. If you have a new coach, we just posted a new coach on our Instagram yesterday, and that creates a lot of buzz because the coach has a great background. They have a good following. So to me, it's posting stuff that's relevant, that's high quality, that's easy for people to want to interact with. I also think staying ahead of trends, like if you want to be good at social media, it's just like anything else. You have to be on social media. You have to see what's going on, and you have to adopt to, what families want to see and what they might be interested in. And I mean, with staying consistent, I think it's just with the stuff that you're posting is you're relevant and you're top of mind. Like if you're posting more and you're posting quality stuff, the people that are going to be interested in choosing your program compared to the next, social media plays a very big role in that. And so to me, I try to build a community. Like there's a community on social media, and, just try to be interactive with the content. And I'll be honest, I don't want it to be too businessy. Like if you can come up with a caption that's, that has a good ring to it, like it doesn't have to be, you want to come off in a professional way. You want to come off the right way, but like you could have a little bit of swag to yourself, when you're posting on the social media. Our social media, we built it up from 0 followers to now we have 11,500 followers. And those are pure followers where we didn't, buy them or, try to get them any other way. So, I think that in itself has been pretty cool. But I just think being genuine and just posting consistently, on social media, and quality content is the biggest thing.
When you think, Jesse, on this, what, organizations might be, they're busy, right? People don't have time, right? One of the reasons we try to help with League Apps is to give them some of that time back. What's the value you've seen in making the investment you've made in social media and in storytelling? Like, how has that helped your organization as you talk about the things that you're doing and the effort it's taking? Like, why is that making a difference for what you want to achieve?
Yeah, in my opinion, I just feel like everybody's on social media now. Everybody, the parents on social media, the kids on the social media, even grandparents are on social media. So to me, it's like, why wouldn't you invest? And I get early on in the earlier stages why you wouldn't want to maybe have his, you'd just be posting, you wouldn't think much about it. Now, like for us as a program, I want to have quality videos, professional photography. The main reason is we have our website right in our bio, so it's creating traffic to not only our Instagram page, but it's creating traffic to our website in itself. And on the website, that's where our tryouts are, that's where our camps are, that's where our clinics are. So it's really driving business to you through social media if you're doing it correctly.
So when you come in, when you think about, there's different touch points that organizations have to tell their story, right? You've got social media, you've got website, right? There may be the ways they use email. So how do you think, when you work with organizations, what are the ways they can think comprehensively about all those different kind of marketing touch points? And when organizations are doing it really well, what is the right way they're putting the right level of emphasis and focus on those different channels?
Yeah, that's a good question. I say all the time, and I was going to say to Jesse, like, there's some things that people have to understand. You're not too above, right? Like a couple years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, yeah. But now everything is social media, everything is online, everything is that digital footprint that you have as an organization, as a business. And I would say like the most apps on the phone that doesn't get deleted is your bank app and probably Facebook or Instagram, right? So I tell people all the time, like, you want to make sure that you are checking the boxes for those key platforms, which if you're thinking about email, it's MailChimp, is that constant contact, right? It's those newsletters. If it's social media, of course, is the big three: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, right? Twitter, not so much because that's shifted a bit. And the last but not least, of course, is the big one, is your website. I don't think that it's going anywhere anytime soon. And the first thing that people do is either chat GP something or Google it, right? Those are what results that you get on those platforms is a website, right? They're not pushing you to an Instagram or a Facebook app to open up the app. They're still pushing you to a website, right? So the first part of that question, I think we have to understand what are those channels that we must have, and those are those kind of 3 or 4 channels that you must have as an organization, regardless. And then 2, what you're doing on there. I think the one people who does well is like, kind of going to Jesse's point, is like they're being themselves first and foremost, right? Like, everybody has an about page. Everybody has a kind of the normal page that you need on a website, but the ones that really kind of rises to the top are the ones that really puts their own sauce, their own swagger into the website. You got to imagine, if I'm shopping around for a program and I'm a parent, right? You're gonna probably go to 5 or 6 in your area, look at what website they have, what social media they have, right? And you're gonna evaluate, right? So if you're gonna invest into your online presence and in your brand, like, make sure you do those things well. And again,
Yeah.
to do it well is of course just is making sure that your message and you being yourself is first and foremost.
When you think about I was just we were looking for camps last summer for my daughter, an overnight camp. And then the website, it was like we ultimately chose a camp because they had their values in the website. It wasn't just like their pricing and explanation of their policies. It was like, here's why we're doing it. Here's the thought. There's an intentionality among everything that was every one of their policies they had on their site, which then suggested there's an intentionality what they do. So I think your point, A, is like those are such good opportunities. Jesse, maybe the last thread here is on sponsorship, right? There's a question of like how you attract people in your program. Then there's the construct of, is there ways to take advantage of the attention you're getting and to unlock kind of sponsors or partnerships? Have you been able to venture in that area, or what opportunity do you see? And how does the brand that you're building and the story that you're creating, where do you think that creates opportunities on that front?
Yeah, I think if you're trying to get sponsors involved with your program, I just think the sponsor that you're going after is going to be more interested in partnering with you if you have a bigger following, if you have a strong following. And I just think having strong branding with like an engaged social presence will attract sponsors. That's my opinion. And I think like companies want to align with organizations that have a loyal following and content that, generates traffic because it means their partnership will be seen, it'll be shared, it'll be valued by the community. So I personally just think if you have strong content and you have a good loyal following, like a brand or a sponsorship is going to want to get involved, especially if your values are similar to what you're looking to do.
Zay, when you think about
Yeah.
organizations that are doing sponsorship effectively, what are they doing well that other organizations can learn from?
I want to add to, I think we need to understand if we're using social media, what these metrics and numbers are. I think some of us are scared of it. But in all these apps, there's a little tab that says insights that you can look at these metrics. Sponsorships are invested in reach and influence first and foremost, right? Like they care how much eyes is on it, and they care how people feel when they are interacting with your brand. So to get the influence part, you can see that in comments and your videos and kind of the front face. But as far as the influence, reach, that's your metrics and your numbers. So the people who does well, of course, get the kind of, I call it the front of the book, correct, which is the visual and the vibes, right? But at the end of the day, you need to know how these things are affecting your demographic, and that's the stuff that you take to, these business rooms, these Zoom meetings when you want to pitch your company. That inks the contract, if you like to say.
Zay, getaway questions for both of you. When you're thinking about next up, what are you most excited about? What do you think is happening in the world that you're going to be part of all kinds of conversations? You'll be leading great panel discussion. What gets you excited about next up?
Yeah, I could jump on that first. I'm excited that every year there's something new in this world, and especially in the land of design and marketing. AI was not really the conversation about a year or two ago, right? So now that's a new thing. And it too, from my perspective, like what I do here at League Apps, like we build a lot of websites, we do logos, we do ads, we do that kind of whole suite of marketing for these companies. I think that a lot of organizers want to be a part of it. They want to do it. But of course, they don't have access to some of that information and content. So I'm excited to spread what I know and what I've experienced to those so they can take that and run with it and make it the best they can.
Love it. Jesse, what about you? What are you most excited to learn and share at Next Up this year?
To be honest with you, I think it's an amazing way for just to network and meet amazing people. Every time I go there, I feel like I get new contacts and I get to meet new like-minded people, whether it's in basketball or it's in other sports. So honestly, that's the main thing. Like there's always things for me. One thing I always remind myself is like, yeah, I've been doing it. I've had a little bit of success, with what I've done, but there's always room for growth. There's always, room to learn. And I learn new, even if there's stuff that I'm not even thinking that I'm going to learn about, I learn about new things every year. So I just think it's meeting amazing people, catching up with my friends from League Apps, and yeah, just learning along the way.
Awesome. Well, we're fortunate to have both of you attending, and Zay, such an important leader at League Apps, and I know stewarding these conversations. So, Jesse, appreciate all your great work as well, and excited to see both of you on the 15th and 16th. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we're hearing all these great best practices of what great clubs are doing around how they're operating, developing players, integrating technology, and then ultimately thinking about the ways that they're bettering themselves. And I think what I've been excited at is the chance to get to know two great individuals in Scott Wollaston and Dave Newberry of the Institute for Youth Sports Leadership over the past couple of years, for that matter. And one thing about you all that it's been awesome is you understand the world of youth sports. I know, Scott, you're the CEO of NC Triad Fusion, a top sports club in the Triad region of North Carolina, and really have grown and scaled that organization. And I know, Dave, you've had about 35 years of experience in this space, and all the work that you've done, and certainly the work that you've done as director of development for Phoenix Rising, but any number of roles that you've had across youth sports. And when I learned about the Institute of Youth Sports Leadership over a year ago and attended your events, we were kindred spirits in the way we thought about professional development and the opportunity to kind of work together. And we had so much conviction that we saw the world the same ways that we said, hey, how do we partner together to make it even a bigger impact? How can we support your events? How can you get involved in our events? How do we leverage some of the data and best practice tools? So excited for you to be here. Even more excited that League Apps can partner with you to try to make an impact on youth sports together. And would maybe love for you to explain a little bit about what IYSL is, and in particular, how you think about data and best practices kind of work together as we talk a little bit about some things that we're going to be rolling out at Next Up. Dave, Scott, do you want to maybe explain a little bit about IYSL? I'll throw it to either of you.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I appreciate the partnership with League Apps. Really, IYSL was formed, one, as a way to really measure best practices of leaders of youth sports organizations, to really try to focus on those particular best practices and see how each of us leading an organization can improve. So that was really the just creating some benchmarks in the industry, and I think that was really what we started out as. It's really evolved into an educational and collaborative platform. We have leaders from youth sports organizations that get together once every 45 days in leadership circles to collaborate, share ideas, and quite frankly, spend a lot of time helping each other work through the challenges that we all face, and not make us feel like we're so alone in this world at times. And so that's been incredibly fruitful, and a little bit, just being honest, a little bit self-serving for me as a leader of a youth sports club. Having this platform to be able to share with colleagues and share best practices has just been invaluable. So the more that we can amplify that, we feel like if we can improve the quality of leadership in youth sports, should lead to some really good outcomes for all the stakeholders that are involved in youth sports.
Love that. And do you, Dave, when you've gotten involved and worked on this, one thing I think attracted us is this idea of using data that we can talk about and highlight examples of organizations doing great work, but is there a way to objectively understand how a club is performing and how that club evolves over time? So maybe you could share, and I know there's a few slides, just what is this idea of a best practices tool? What is the idea of a club life cycle? And maybe you can just take a couple minutes to explain that, and we'll talk about how we're going to work together on it.
Sure. Well, thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for having us on this pre-event webinar. Certainly, this is a longitudinal project that's been going on now for over 15 years. We've collected data from 3,000 youth sports clubs over that period. Most recently, over the last 18 months, updated that research. We have 16 different sports included in that project, and we evaluate the organizations based on 60 best practices that are evidence-based. So there are certainly many best practices that we haven't as yet seen evidence in. And each time we see that evidence, then we add that as an additional best practice. So it's a great tool for people to use in order to create awareness of where their program is in terms of their performance against best practices. And then if we can pull up the slide with the life cycle, we can certainly discuss the evolution of the club. So there's 5 different phases of evolution. The first phase is formation. That's when the club originally forms. Typically, it is a parent or a volunteer who feels that they want to establish a youth club for the community. It's certainly more prevalent probably 10, 15 years ago. And then as the club goes through different phases of evolution, they become better business people, they employ better best practices, and then they score much higher on those 60 best practices we mentioned before. So the ultimate goal is to make their way through the evolutionary process and get to the model club status. As the next slide will show, we have about 80% of clubs that actually get to stage 3, the development phase, and they then either stagnate or regress. So about 20% of all clubs out of that 3,000 have made it past phase 3 into phase 4, and then ultimately into phase 5.
Love that. And when you think about, and if we go to the next slide, I think it's interesting to think about, it's not just arbitrary, like there are these dimensions, I guess, that are at the heart of the evaluation. So how does the tool actually work? If, what's the quick explanation of what the tool does and how organizations kind of leverage it?
Yeah, so those 60 best practices relate to 10 key success factors. So each one of those is attributed to one of these 10. Leadership is by far and away the most important of all those factors, so it's weighted the highest, all the way down, as you can see, through to revenue diversification. And when someone completes the survey, they read a statement, reflect on their performance, and then choose one of 5 different responses based on their level of agreement. And that ultimately then creates an aggregation of the data and produces a life cycle report. And there's 9 different parts of that report, depending on their willingness to include other members of their club, including leadership, staff, coaches, and their members in the data collection.
Scott, maybe one last kind of getaway question here is, I think we talk about how there's this life cycle of the clubs, and then there's the idea that as they're evolving or potentially evolving, the world around them is changing and evolving even more rapidly. So what is the way that you see organizations trying to meet this moment? That if there's a lot of change that's happening, what is the best way that clubs are ultimately able to evolve in a way so that they can ultimately become that model club?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is collaboration and learning from others because, as Dave kind of said, we have these best practices that are statements, but honestly, how they manifest themselves looks very different from club to club. Someone can measure quite high, maybe at a model club phase, if you will, in a particular area, but what they do could actually be a little different to another club. And so I think when you get leaders together from different organizations collaborating and sharing what they're doing, I think it gives people an opportunity to think a little differently about things, and I think it allows us to sort of predict the future a bit more, and be prepared when those changes come. So, and I think we know in the geography of our, whether you're talking about America, North America, what people experience in the Northeast can be different to what people experience perhaps in California and in the youth sports space. And so I think it's good for us to hear from others, which is obviously an excellent reason for why it's important for leaders to attend events like Next Up, like Lead Plus, that they're going to get the opportunity to collaborate and share. Yes, you're going to learn from speakers and from others, but to be able to share ideas as well is very invigorating and inspiring, and I just really encourage everyone to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's a great maybe note to get away on in the sense that the idea that if you're a club that's committed to evolve, you're a leader that's committed to evolve, and I would make the case you don't really have a chance to sit still because the world's not sitting still around you. Then one, understand where you stand and where you can improve, and two, put yourself in situations where you can learn from others, right? And for you also to help others learn. And so I know that kind of collaboration is at the heart of why we're excited to collaborate with IYSL and be part of Lead Plus and all the things we want to do together. It's also at the heart of why we created NextUp. So I know we're excited to have this benchmarking report tool and leverage that for NextUp, and we'll be pushing this out to everyone that's attending. So if you're able to fill that out at a minimum as a leader, that self-assessment, let alone the kind of broader use of the tool to distribute it to all the different stakeholders, it'll help you give a roadmap for how to take advantage of what's at NextUp, what sessions to go to, who to meet and talk with, and we'll be working with IYSL to ensure that we're taking the insights coming out of this to make your NextUp experience more valuable, and also the learning that comes from there as well. So I know, guys, we're really excited about the partnership and congratulate you on everything you've done. Excited to see you at NextUp as well. We'll be able to talk about the tool and best practices and all of your experience through the various events that take place there, in addition to being part of the Lead Plus event, which I know we announced today. So, and with that, I want to thank everyone for being here, those that are watching live and those that will watch it recorded. Go to nextupconference.com. Come hang out in New York, October 15th and 16th. Take the best practices survey in advance, and you'll be that much closer to a model club and turn out like organizations like these guys represent. So appreciate Scott, Dave, for everything you're doing and we're going to do together in youth sports. Appreciate everything everyone's doing to make youth sports better. Excited to see you in New York in October. Thanks, everyone.